Emovis Ireland is a leading provider of mobility-based solutions. They make the complicated easy because they believe in the freedom of going places. And today we're going to meet Francoise Riou, who's the CEO of Emovis. So Francoise, why did Emovis decide to make the Going Place podcast?
The decision came from the evolving world of mobility around Europe and in the world. And as we were in Dublin, we thought that we could take part of this changing world and give a little contribution to this by asking the expert in mobility in Dublin to come and deliver their thought and their perspective around what's happening now in Dublin. So just a contribution to help and deliver the message.
And for people to find out more, because it's a complex area, the area of transport, and there's a lot of people involved. So I guess to give people a better understanding of the various different organisations and how they're all trying to contribute to make transport better.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that currently we talk a lot about mobility as a service, which is a little bit an expert word. But what is sure is that in Dublin and around the city, you have more and more congestion, more and more difficulties to commute. And these mobility solutions that are provided by the different providers and encouraged by the authorities is really something we have to go into. It's really one of the solutions to make life of people easier and contribute to the development of the country as well. So this is very important. So having all these different entities and different authorities coming to this podcast and just explaining what their views are, and some of them may be disruptive, some of them may be different, and this is all what will bring the diversity and help this mobility as a service to happen.
Let's find out a bit more about Emovis themselves and what you guys do, and if you can tell me some of your history in Ireland.
Emovis came to Ireland to set up the first barrier-free tolling system on the M50 and operating this system. So we have set up the system, we have operated the system and managed the whole service for the authority for TII authority. And then Emovis has developed this knowledge and this expertise around the world, and we have been very much involved in free flow tolling system infrastructure in general. So it can be motorways, bridges, tunnels, and all these. Now it was 10 years ago. We have set up this company. And we have developed in other countries, and now we are thinking about what the future.
How big is Emovis? How many people work in Emovis in Ireland and indeed globally?
Emovis is 650 staff, and in Ireland we are 180 staff, mainly working on customer service, customer experience on behalf of the authority.
And you mentioned tolling. What else does Emovis do?
Emovis is currently engaging in all new way of doing the road charging systems. And the road charging systems are not only to collect funds to develop infrastructure, to build roads, to maintain roads. It's as well to develop a new behavior on the road. So by developing road user charging in the US, what we do currently in Utah, we just try to have an impact on how people behave, what time they drive, how to reduce congestion, how to reduce the carbon footprint. So we are very much evolving towards a sustainable transport. And this is where we are definitively going. Another thing we do as well is that we, beside this, we are able to create platforms to interconnect services and providers and authorities and customers in order to to mix all these data together, to clear the data and to re-inject this data to the right provider and the right service. So it's like a banking system, in fact. Then we collect all the transportation transaction, we put them into a big hub, and then we just do the split between the different operation or different operators and different providers. This is a big, what we call interoperability service.
What would you say are the, let's call them the societal benefits of tolling in Ireland?
I would say that the first tolling collection is for the benefit of everyone in the country, because it will help to finance the maintenance of the road first. This is a massive cost to maintain a road, and if you need this massive amount of funds, of money to do it, and the tolling helps to do that. Secondly, the tolling system will help to build new motorways, new roads where in rural areas, so it will help all these small little towns and cities to be connected and interconnected. So this what we collect not for ourselves, we don't collect for ourselves, we collect for the transport infrastructure island, will be used for the benefit of the development of the country. And this is where, rather than going to the tax or to the revenue, you go to this collection to profit to the biggest numbers.
We've talked before on the podcast about mobility as a service. What role does emovis play in a better integrated transport system?
When a better integrated system will be with this platform we have for interoperability, because we connect the whole infrastructure, all networks together. So that it means that with one tag, for example, you go from north to south. With only your tag, you just try to find, how to pay there or how to pay there or change your payment means. You just don't bother. You don't think about it, and you receive only one invoice with everything on it. So this is currently what could be developed. But as well, we are working very much on all this new way of developing sustainable transport, and this what is called in the US road user charging. So that's where you use your smartphone, connect it to your car, and then with this we define an area where we say, okay, maybe between lunchtime. At lunchtime, it's absolutely free, but during rush hours, where we want to change the habit of people, we will charge a little bit more. And then this connection will help the government to define a strategy around how to push people to change their habits and their attitude and the way they use the road.
And is that in place elsewhere in around the world, and does it work effectively?
It works effectively mainly in the US.
Okay.
It's where the space is the most evolving, quickly changing. And that's where there is a real demand for that. We are doing some pilots in other countries, but they are at the pilot stage currently.
You're originally from France. How long have you lived in Dublin, and what do you think of the transport system?
I've been 5 years in Dublin, so what I could say, what I could see about the transport system is, first, it's changing. The last few years, it's been changing a lot. I've seen emerging strategy, real funding are in place now. There's a real policy and real wish to change things around public transportation. So this is very important. Because if you want to manage congestion and if you want to manage much better the road, you need to propose alternative way of traveling. So that's what you have to work on. But I would say there is still a lot to do. because it's not changing in 2 days, all these infrastructures and transportation. The thing is that I would say that to go from my home to my office, it takes me 40 minutes, all right? If I want to take a bus or catch a bus or whatever, a train or what, no, it's impossible.
Okay, so you must drive.
I must drive. I cannot choose an alternative way to go to work. You know? So 40 minutes is nothing. You know, it's nothing when you think about from Paris. In Paris, when I go from my home to my office in France, it's 3 hours.
Okay, but it's a big distance though, no?
60 kilometers.
3 hours and 60 kilometers.
3 hours. So,
Okay.
so when I see 40 minutes here, I'm fine. I don't complain, but I know that it won't go better. You know, the commuters in Dublin and in Ireland, when you take all the commuters, first the number of commuters in 30 years have been multiplied by 3.
In 30 years?
In 30 years,
Wow.
since '86, the number of commuters have been multiplied by 3. And when you look at people commuting from their home to their office, 62% are using a car.
Okay, so of
Okay.
everybody commuting, 62% are in a car.
Are in a car.
Okay.
Okay. So that means that could it be better? I don't know. But what is sure is that you have 45% only in Dublin and 73% in rural areas where you don't have any public transportation offers. So I mean, it's just an indication that a lot has to be done, but not only in Dublin. And this is a real challenge because it's difficult.
And the things that need to be done in your mind, would it be to increase public transport, but also to try and incentivize people to get out of their cars?
So
and how do you do that?
So we are in the scope of these incentives. So that means that some authorities in other countries, they just decide. So you have different ways, a number of ways. It's a combination of different possibilities, options. When you look at what has been done in Paris, when you want to drive in Paris, now it's very difficult. First, they have reduced the number of lanes for cars,
Okay.
and they have massively increased the number of lanes for buses, dedicated lanes, and you have now dedicated lanes for bicycle, but really dedicated lanes, separate from the traffic and so on, very safe. So they made a real choice of developing the infrastructure in order to put the car on beside, to put the car on the side. So it's a real political engagement because people don't like that.
Okay.
They could be very angry, get very angry. But once you understand the whole approach and once you get used to it, then you move to the public transportation, and that means your public transportation will be absolutely perfect. And then using this public transportation, then you change your way of traveling. So it's one way to do it. Another way is for maybe around the city when you have a long commuting to do, then it's how to manage the road usage. So when you have congestion, that's where in the US, for example, what's happening in the US, for example, you are charged much more depending on the speed on the motorway.
Okay.
So if the speed is quite high, in accordance with regulation, of course, but quite high, that means you don't have so much congestion. And the cost of road usage is low. If the speed is very low, that you have so much congestion, then you pay more. Because what is rare is expensive. You
Yes.
see what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the whole approach. Well, this is one approach, but it's as well a way to incentivize and to try to put a kind of challenge in how do I change my way, the way I travel, the way I do my journeys. Now, I would say that this looks great, but sometimes you don't have too much choice. Imagine you are I'm a mother, I'm in transport, but I have to go with my kid to the creche or to the school and bring my kids to the school and so on. It's more difficult in a bus sometimes.
Sure.
Than with my car, where I put everything at the back of the car. I put my kids with me on the car and I drop them at the school. So as well, and if I have to stop when I come back to look after my mother who needs some support from me, I mean, public transportation could be a solution, but the car is more convenient currently for me.
Practical.
And practical. So this is as well depending on what your objectives are. But what we used to do, I have set up on a French motorway what we called an incentive for congestion, and it's on the most used motorway on Sunday evenings. People, Parisian would go to the countryside with this motorway and come back, and all together at the same time.
At 7 o'clock on a Sunday evening.
At 7 o'clock on Sunday evening.
It's good luck.
Okay, because you have school the day after for other kids and so on. So we were having massive congestion, I would say 15 kilometers before entering into Paris, in Paris. So we decided to put this incentive on tolling. So we said, okay, before 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, it will be minus 20% on tolling. And after 6 o'clock, it will be plus 20%. The difference between the two would be 40%. But at the end of the day, the commitment with the government was you cannot increase the toll in any way. So it has to be balanced. It has to be at zero. You don't make any money on this. You just do an incentive to manage the congestion. Only 5 to 10% is enough to change the whole scope and the whole landscape. With this 5 to 10% change in the habits, it was enough to move people and to decrease the congestion. So you don't need massive move and massive cultural change. You just need to have this small number of cars or vehicles that are making the congestion happening.
And so in the consumer's pocket then, you're talking the difference of 30, 40 cent perhaps?
Oh, the difference was maybe €1. I don't have this at the top of my head, but yes, 50 cents, 50 to €1, yeah.
Okay. Is that something you think would work on, say, the M50 in Dublin? That kind of a system?
It's a system that exists and that is working for sure. Now, it's all about what the strategy of the authority is, because it's always about what do I want to achieve and what do I want to obtain as a result. So it's really about the strategy. So of course things can work, but now it's all about what is really my strategy, and it's about as well a lot of communication. It has to be transparent, honest, communicated, and working very well so that acceptance could be good enough.
Yeah, I understand. Let's talk about the various different people, and there's many involved in trying to improve transport in Ireland. Emovis is well placed within all that. Do you feel there's a lack of joined up thinking between all the various stakeholders, or are they doing enough? Because even just on a communication level, to get everyone on the same page must be quite difficult.
Yeah, I think that they have. It's a real challenge, real challenge, and it's really, really difficult. So you cannot move everything at the same time. So that means you have to prioritize. So for sure, it will take time. Okay, but what I can see in the change, it's a real strategy. NTA is doing a brilliant job around all the strategy that has been delivered. The funding is there. The willing of having this happening at different authorities level is there. Now, what would help and speed up the whole process would be to have a clear leadership about it, and to join all these different entities working together onto a single project or single governance maybe, or having a clarification around this governance and leadership. It's absolutely needed to have the possibility to join all this brilliant work done, but separately for each of them, because the need for mobility is collaboration. And even for providers like we are, as we are, I mean, we don't think anymore about competing and the old world, you know, we were just in competition, in permanent, we are just in permanent competition for sure. But with mobility as a service, we have to share data. The transparency must happen on data. We have to share the service. We have to really think about what is our expertise and focus on our perspective and understand that it cannot be only one actor. It's a combination of a number of actors. And the role of authorities is first to define what the strategy is for the country, what the policies are, what the regulations are, because the private actors cannot act on their own, on their side. The control has to be kept at the government authorities level of a country, but as well to make sure that there is a level of transparency into the data sharing, because we need to understand the complete scope of this system in order to provide the best service to the end user. So, I mean, it's a different approach where we will talk much more about partnering than competing.
Yeah, to be on the same team.
So cultural change is as well on the side of the private operators and the side of the different authorities. How do I feel my role is really at the end of the day? Is it that I do everything by myself and I own my own system and I keep the control of everything? Or is it that I understand that I don't need to own this, I just need the service, and this is the achievement, is to deliver the service to the end user, to have an easy life in my country, you know? So, and as well the authority has a role to make sure that there is a real fairness into the delivery of this ease of mobility, ease of traveling. When you have elderly people, for example, or disabled people, or all these vulnerable people, we need to think about them. Maybe they are not the most for a private operator. They are not representing the most of the economic profitability. But the authorities will have the role to make sure that everyone is addressed, that no one is left on the side. That means we have solution for that. We just have to work on that and make sure that we don't forget them on the side. It has to be inclusive. So this is as well the role of the authorities, make sure that everyone in the country is on the same path of development and same side.
So inclusivity
for everybody.
Yeah.
And this a combination of private operators in isolation could not maybe address this, where an authority and a gathering of partners around one single project or one single program would help for this and would contribute to this achievement.
Where does your passion for your job come from?
First, it's a constantly changing world. It's a world where you deal with a number of technical challenges that are really pushing you out of the box. You know, to have a look at so many different options that you were not thinking about, and it works. It's just that you do things and they work. And now you meet as well such a variety of different authorities in different countries. My company is an international company and I work internationally. So you don't meet the exact same way of approaching the business where I am in all the different countries where I work and where we work as an international company, and that brings diversity. So this experience we have, we share this experience with all the authorities we meet. So that means we can share what's happening in other countries. We can share about what solution has been developed elsewhere. So it brings everyone to the top, you know. So that's where it becomes, quite passionate.
If you look into your crystal ball for a moment, since you've been in Ireland in the last 5 years, there has been a lot of change. If you look 5 years ahead from now, what change do you see that will have happened for consumers and for customers?
Realistically?
Yes. Yes, we'll get to the blue skies thinking in a moment, but yeah, realistically, for commuters and the like, in 5 years, will we see improvement?
I would believe that this leadership, which is for me a key component of the success of developing this mobility as a service world in Dublin, I think this will be fixed. So the solution will be there. The size of Dublin, when you compare the size of Dublin to other Northern European countries, I mean, it's quite similar. And Dublin has a number of really strength to come and to play at the head of the game. So now it's a political engagement. And it will happen. But it's a political engagement now that needs to happen, and I would believe that could happen, yeah.
Okay, of all the challenges and perhaps obstacles that are out there, if we could just wave a magic wand over one of them right now and fix it or implement it, so if we can make one change right now to the transport sector, for you, what would it be?
First, I would think that to be open to any disruptive way of traveling would be something important. So when I say that, we talk about autonomous car happening in cities.
Okay, so the driverless cars.
Driverless cars, autonomous car. I don't see the point. This should happen. This should happen. We talk about flying cars as well. Flying taxis. This, when you look at where, you know, the presentation, for the moment it's only small tests and pilots, but it should happen. It should happen, and Dublin can absolutely be involved in all this new way of transportation. Be open to disruptive and new ways of transportation. This is the first thing. So, as a result of this, what could happen? Currently, I need 40 minutes to go to work, right? So, in the future, I want half of it to be cut and gone.
So, 20 minutes, okay.
20 minutes. I want to divide by 2 the commuting time of the Irish people.
Okay, well, that sounds great. And one way to do that is to be in a pilotless flying car?
Could be in flying car. Another thing as well is that you make value from the time, because when you commute, you are on your car. What do? You listen to radio.
Yeah.
But once you have listened to, you cannot work. You cannot check your laptop. You cannot.
It's unproductive in a lot of ways.
It's not really productive. So then you can have as well another approach, which is to give productivity, to bring back productivity to this time. So how do you bring back productivity to this time? Is that you go into you just jump into a car where you don't have to drive, or into a public transport that is absolutely the right fit for your travel.
Yeah.
And you start working. You have places in buses where you can work, and you can have meetings, or you can have phone calls, or place you can...
Or catch up on sleep.
So, or catch up on sleep, or watch, So it's just a way of saying, okay, I'm not available because I have to drive, so how can I be available, and what solution I can propose? And then from the minute I put my foot into my car, onto my car, I can start being productive. Yeah. So it's a way to take this unproductive time of commuting away and being,
It sounds really exciting, and something we would have seen, in the sci-fi movies and things. Do you think it will actually happen, that maybe one day, somewhere in the near future, there will be cars flying over and back across the River Liffey in Dublin?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
I don't know when, but Absolutely, absolutely. It will happen.
right.
It will happen.
Francoise, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and telling us everything about emovis. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, pleasure.